Good afternoon. My name is Jose Garza, and I'm running to be your district attorney right here in Travis County. The last few weeks, we've all been settling in to our new normal and trying to understand what this new normal is going to look like and for how long. And the last few weeks, quite frankly, have felt a little bit dizzying. We are well over 40,000 deaths here in the United States, far more than any country in the world. And next week, the state of Georgia is going to open up tattoo parlors, places where you can get your haircut, and gyms. It's been hard to escape the feeling that our elected officials have not all been honest with us. And that's why taking care of our community is more important than ever, and why we all have a responsibility to step up and do just that. And that includes making sure that we can all vote safely. We all watched with horror as people lined up in the state of Wisconsin with personal protective gear, standing 6 feet apart so that they could vote. We all wondered how much risk each of those voters was taking on and whether it was really necessary. And we just learned today that there are approximately 19 new cases of COVID-19 in Wisconsin, of people who were either standing in line to vote or who volunteered to be poll workers during that election. So today I am incredibly grateful to be joined by my good friends, Mimi Marziani and Drew Galloway. We want to make sure that you are up on the latest developments about voting here in Texas and Travis County, and make sure you know that there are ways that you can get involved to ensure that we can all vote safely. Mimi, how are you? It's so good to see you.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me. So really grateful to be joined by Mimi Marziani. Mimi teaches election law and policy at the University of Texas and serves as the president of the Texas Civil Rights Project. There are few lawyers in the state of Texas who know as much about election law as Mimi does, and who knows about the real challenges that Texans face every single year when they want to exercise their right to vote. So right here all across the United States and in Texas, COVID-19 has endangered people's ability to vote safely. And I think the first question I have for you is, what does the law say about that? What does the law have to say about people being able to vote when they feel like they are sick or may be sick?
Well, first, thank you so much for such a nice introduction.
Of course.
And yeah, I'm really happy to be here because there's obviously a lot that we as a community need to address in this time of coronavirus, but one is stepping up to protect our democracy, because as Jose said earlier, without elected officials who are really fighting for all of us and taking care of all of us, nothing else is going to get solved. So I have some good news and bad news on what the law says about your right to vote in the middle of a pandemic. The good news is we all still have the protections under law that we always have. The US Constitution protects our right to vote, federal laws and state laws. And they all say that we can't be treated differently than other people in exercising our right to vote. It can't be too difficult for us to vote. And that we also can't be forced to pit our right to vote against other rights. For instance, the right to stay safe. And so in Texas, our team at the Texas Civil Rights Project, many election law scholars have been looking closely at the law that allows you to vote by mail if you hit certain categories of criteria. The one that's most important is that Texas says you can vote by mail if you have a disability, which is defined as an ailment that would prevent you from going to the polls safely. So in my view, as a lawyer, and the view that's shared by legal experts across the country, Republicans and Democrats, that's a no-brainer. Right now, none of us could go to the polls safely because all of us are in danger of contracting the coronavirus. Unfortunately, the state of Texas has not taken that position, and they've taken the position that is contrary to both the letter of the law and to experts across the country, that no mail-in voting should still be constrained to a small number of people, including people who have some sort of a pre-existing disability. And so I'm really happy to say that the Texas Civil Rights Project got a win at the trial court last week. And so we are hoping that the courts will clarify this issue once and for all. The state really horrifically has decided to appeal that decision. So we are going to continue fighting in the courts for at least the next couple of weeks.
And so, Mimi, if you can, that's, first of all, I'm just really grateful to know that there's at least an argument to be made that we don't all have to show up and vote in person in the middle of a pandemic.
Very good argument.
Indeed. And so unpack this for us a little bit. I think the Texas Democratic Party sued asking a court to say that their interpretation of the law was correct. Texas Civil Rights Project, representing several plaintiffs, stepped in and said, we have an important say in this. Tell us a little bit about how this unfolded. Right. And then maybe give us a little bit of a, I know these things are unpredictable, but what you think the process might look like going forward.
Of course. So you're exactly right. Because this wasn't, I think, obvious to most of the viewers, the coronavirus pandemic is not something that we've dealt with before. So the Texas Democratic Party went to court and said, you know, we want to get clarity to make sure that everybody right now can request a mail-in ballot freely. And as I said, honestly, a lot of observers were surprised that the state of Texas, even though it has a track record of voter suppression, that it wouldn't agree with this common sense reading of the law. And so for the Texas Civil Rights Project and for community groups, I think it really hit a head when Attorney General Ken Paxton then threatened that he would go after community groups who are encouraging people to vote by mail, which is egregious. And so we jumped into the court case representing community groups and individual voters to make sure that we could get clarity in the law and also protect any community groups from that sort of overreach. So I'll say where we are right now, though, even though the state has said it will continue to fight us in court, right now we have a ruling from a judge here in Travis County who has said absolutely, you know, no question that as we're looking at the July runoff, everybody is qualified to apply to vote by mail. And we also know that several high-ranking county officials, both in Travis County and in other counties across Texas, have been looking at the judge's order and saying, we agree with this completely. And they are already making plans and preparations to allow many more people to vote by mail. So I think that is encouraging. You know, I do believe many people are already starting to request their ballots for mail. And as I said, the counties are already starting to take those steps while we will continue to litigate as long as the state, you know, refuses to drop this issue. It's a little hard to know how this will all turn out, but I do think, one, that we will have an answer fairly quickly. The counties have said that they need to know as soon as possible, but no later than early May, because they have an election to plan. And I also will say that, you know, I'm very hopeful looking across the country. There's a couple other states that have laws very similar to Texas, and every election law expert who has looked at these laws, regardless of their political leanings, has come down on our side. That said that that's not just the right way to read the law, but it is the best way that we can protect voting rights. And so, you know, I have some optimism that you know, we will ultimately get the higher up judges to agree with us too.
Well, that's really good to hear. And just, you know, again, for folks watching at home, all this legal procedure can be tough to follow. It feels like a maze sometimes, but we have a decision from a district court. The state has said they're going to appeal but for now, that district court decision is in place. It hasn't been stayed.
That's right.
Okay, great. So as people are listening today, our best understanding of the law is that people can apply for a mail-in ballot if they're afraid or if they
That's
have
correct.
concerns about COVID-19.
That's right.
Great. Well, thank you for all of the work you do, and for I wasn't surprised when TCRP jumped into this fight, and so grateful to the voices that you are bringing into this fight. It's really important. And we're also really grateful to have one of those voices who is now in this fight
Right.
with us, Drew Galloway, who is my friend and the executive director of Move Texas. And for those of you who don't know Move, you should. Move builds power in underrepresented youth communities through civic education, leadership development, and issue advocacy. And Drew, for the last 10 years, it feels like Move has been fighting to make sure that young people can be part of and participate in our democracy. You guys register voters, you fight for policy change, and now you've joined this lawsuit. Tell us why. What I know you have not been shy about getting into these kind of fights before. What made you guys feel like this was the fight to jump into?
Yeah. First of all, thanks, Jose. It's a pleasure to be with you and Mimi here tonight to talk a little bit about voting in Texas, and especially this July runoff election. You know, Move was actually founded in 2013, so we're 7 years old, but what a 7 years, right? But you know, like, we started out as a student organization at the University of Texas at San Antonio, and over the last several years have grown into an organization that is now representing young people in seven different cities on nearly 55 campuses, and you know, through our fellowship program and our internship program and really robust volunteer programs, we help young people get involved in their local government and get registered to vote, learn about all of the like different things that they can plug into, and then actually get them to go vote. And so like, you know, in 2018, we registered 30,000 people. In 2019, we registered 25,000. And, you know, it's those folks that we've registered over just the last couple years, and even the beginning of this year, that we see the pandemic, it's jeopardizing their ability to go to the polls, and they're having to make this choice between their health and their right to vote. And we understand that, you know, like vote by mail is an opportunity for young people to be safe and still have their voices heard at the polling place or at the ballot box. But, you know, the way the law is set up with the age limit and different restrictions, most young people would not qualify for that. So we understand that, that, you know, as Mimi mentioned, that, you know, COVID-19 does create a disability, and that will then allow young people and Texans across the state to exercise their right to vote and in a safe place, which is their home.
So it's crucial now more than ever that young people, and really all people, have the ability to vote safely. And you know, I've seen, as you mentioned, Move has grown really quickly. I was really excited to see Move organizers on the University of Texas campus registering voters this last year. And so you're fighting for young people and all people to be able to vote by mail. But that's not all, is it? I mean, there are other changes that need to happen to make voting more accessible for young people. Tell us, what else is Move advocating? What other changes do we need to make?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think that, like, while we want to be their voice in court when it comes to like making sure that they have the right to go vote and vote by mail in this next election, the other part of it is that COVID has actually displaced a lot of young people, folks who were at the University of Texas at Austin or on their college campus, and they lived there. And then when campus shut down, they had to leave. So not only are they going through like financial turmoil and trying to find a place to live or move back home with their parents, that also affects their voter registration. And as you well know, Texas is one of the most difficult states in the nation to register to vote in because we have a wet signature requirement. And so what that means is that you actually have to sign the piece of paper versus other states that have online voter registration or automatic voter registration. Those states make registering to vote easy and accessible and secure. Meanwhile, our system is often like the old-fashioned way that we do voter registration every single day, which is like, I see you on campus and I register you to vote with a clipboard and a piece of paper. And because students aren't on campus anymore, it's imperative that they double check on their voter registration status and that they change their address if they need to for this July election. And they can go to our website, which is movetexas.org/register, and to do all of that. So not only do they need to double check their registration, make sure they're good for July, they also need to join our fight for online voter registration. COVID has shown us the cracks in our democracy that we've always known, but has made them even more apparent. So things like, not having an online voter registration system in the state, or not having a robust vote by mail system, or even not having real protections at the polling places and allowing curbside voting to be expanded for the July election. All of those things are the things that we can be talking about now and that we can be working on the county level to make sure that our county election administrators are ready to implement them and serve as many voters as possible in the safest way possible.
Absolutely. So it is time to take both our election system and our criminal justice system back to the future, or maybe to the future in the first place. Look, this is obviously a really scary time. It's really unpredictable. People are anxious about a lot of things, and one of them is we don't know what the election will look like in July. But we're not powerless right now. There are steps that people can take to get involved. Mimi and Andrew, because I know you are both asking people to jump into this fight. And we'll put up a link in just a second to a couple of websites to learn more about this. But just tell us, what can people do? People who are sitting at home, who want to get involved and make sure that we're all able to vote safely, what can they do?
So one thing I'll point out, and to go back to, I want to lift up something Drew said that I think is so important, that we have seen in Texas a chronic underinvestment in our election infrastructure. And like so many places in life, when you chronically underinvest in things, the people who are hurt worst by those are the groups of people who are already marginalized. And so that's why we see long lines at college campuses, long lines in communities of color, and things that make it more difficult for poorer people to vote in general. And it all, I think, actually came to a head during the primary, but it has now been, COVID has very much exposed just how bad that system has become. And so at the Texas Civil Rights Project, I'd encourage you to go to our website. We have in particular a petition that we've been gathering thousands of signatures already to the Secretary of State, because under her watch, she first allowed a fiasco during the primary where we saw lines up to 7 hours in some communities of color. And then in response to the coronavirus pandemic, she has stayed completely silent. And so the petition calls on her to exercise her leadership. I mean, if this was a company, she would be the CEO of our elections, and she's been completely MIA, which is excusable. She inexcusable. She works for us. So we have a petition calling on her to step up in this moment and giving her a list of common sense reforms. I mean, one is making sure that everybody who wants to can vote by mail, but other reforms are allowing us to expand curbside voting, maybe get creative and do drive-through voting. We were talking before the call, you can get drive-through cocktails right now. We should be able to do drive-through voting in
Absolutely.
July to make sure that all of us are safe. We need to make sure that we have the proper equipment and polling place set up to protect the amazing people who serve as our election workers. And so we have, the legal experts at TCRP have done the homework, put together a list. We have sent that to Secretary Hughes, but we really need everybody to speak up and sign that petition so that we make sure that she pays attention to this issue.
Amazing. Drew, what else? How can
Yeah,
folks?
I would just echo everything that Mimi said. In addition to like what I said a little earlier, is like make sure like double check on your voter registration status and make a plan to vote in July, whether that's going to be vote by mail or whether that's going to be curbside voting or whether that's going to be, going to the polling location and wearing a mask. Like make that plan now and continue to keep up with both of our organizations and watch the news as like this changes and we get more clarification on that. Additionally, we also have a petition on our website, movetexas.org, that is calling on the state to really undertake and consider 3 big things. Again, online voter registration is a must. The legislature needs to start thinking about that, and it's more important than ever that we update our voter registration system. The second thing is just like Mimi said, vote by mail is more important than ever right now, and will safely protect thousands and tens of thousands of voters across the state if they are allowed to vote that way. And then lastly, making sure that the polling locations and poll workers are protected, encouraging young people to become poll workers, and making sure that we stop moving elections and actually deal with the systemic issues that come with protecting the elections and protecting our vote. And lastly, you can find more information on our website about our campaigns at the local level, and that's in Bexar County and Harris County, Dallas, Webb County, and Hayes County, to make sure that voting is protected in those counties, and that we're working directly with county commissioners, the county judge, and election administrators, that we're doing everything we can to make voting safe and secure and also accessible for voters across those areas.
Great. Well, Drew and Mimi, thank you so much again for joining us. It's really good to see both of you looking healthy and well. We all have a responsibility to stop the spread of the coronavirus, and that means sheltering in place, but it also means doing everything we can to make sure that people can vote safely. In the middle of this pandemic, our ability to vote safely will be one of the key indicators of the health of our democracy. So thank you guys both for joining us. I'm Jose Garza and look forward to seeing everyone soon.
Wonderful. Thanks again for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.